There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues, with capital the heart of their design? When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no, which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go, and we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
Okay, hello, cousins. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our most excellent intro, courtesy of Mr. Mayor Jared. I love our intro. I'm never going to get sick of it. I love that. He assured me earlier you couldn't hear the horrible lawn noises going on, like right behind me. But we have switched lawn noises, and now we're on. It was lawnmower, a giant lawnmower, and now it's.
Do I have a background
I don't
that's
know
a
what
lawn?
it's. Oh God, it's driving me
Or is
insane.
it? That's almost a
I can't
lawn.
stand it. I was just telling him I can't stand the noise pollution drives me crazy, and we've been having a lot of tech issues. Today is no different. I'm having trouble getting our YouTube to load so that I can share the link. So I will try to get the live link of the show up throughout as we go. Hopefully, I'll just be able to join the show this week. That's what I'm hoping for. So we've got. Pretty unintentionally, a pretty packed show for you this week. A lot of stuff happened over the weekend. A few things, couple of things. You might have heard about JD Couch killing the Pope. And if you say, hey, you can't draw that parallel, well, 100% of the popes that he's met died shortly thereafter. So, I mean, yeah, you can take it how you want to take it, and I'm not
Making up
very
fake
surprised
initials
about it.
for him. Making up fake initials for him is funny. I've long laughed about the Jorkin de Penis Vance. In this case, it is just killed de Pope Vance.
Yeah, I've definitely enjoyed the tomfoolery.
I now no longer really know what his face looks like because he's been so
Or
photoshopped
the
for
baby
so long
memes,
now.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
confusing.
he's been made look more babyish. His beard has been made to look larger. His eyes are bigger, smaller. His head is rounder, less. It's like freaking what is it, Charlie Kirk? I can no longer look at him and tell
Right.
whether or not his face has been edited because every picture I ever see of him has his face edited. Charlie
Yeah.
Kirk, they make the rest of his facial features smaller than his actual head, so he has like tiny eyes and nose, or really big eyes and nose on, on his face. So I'm not sure what his actual facial proportions are anymore.
And it's sort of
But
like, oh, we're body shaming. I mean, they're dickheads. Like you could have a little bit of latitude when the person is a real asshole.
it
When
feels
it
very
comes to
American to
it.
Photoshop your elected representatives. That feels very First Amendment-y to
Yeah,
me.
right. It does. It definitely does. So while that was going on, unsurprisingly, considering that there's no like decorum or rule of law when it comes to a Trump administration, uh, Piggle Mini Honey, Puggle Piggle Peggle. His name sounds like a goddamn Harry Potter incantation. Like
Now I don't know who
Piggle
you
Money
mean.
Honey. Like what's his fucking name? I had to look it up to write it down in our promo.
Talking
Peg
about Hedge Smith.
Peg
Who we?
Peg Hedgeledge. I don't know, honestly. Like, it doesn't matter. Knowing his name is against my will, anyways. So but he keeps leaking shit. And this time, he looped in his wife and brother-in-law on national security issues because he's cool guy number one with all the racist tattoos. So
That's the
he's
mistake you make. You gotta keep your family out of it. Bernie
right.
learned
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We learned that lesson way back in the Clinton days when he pardoned his brother-in-law from any crimes. So yeah, you got to keep your family out of it. Anyways, I'm still having some issues here about getting the video posted, but I'll work on it. So that's been going on. As a quick note, because I'm tired of talking about it, there was a note in the news that AOC has now raised $450 million. Like, number's probably up since I saw that last. Of money from, a lot of that coming from small donations from vulnerable people who really think she's going to be the number one. They kind of are pushing this narrative that she's Bernie's protege. She's going to pick up the torch where he left off. They're really leaving,
My point is,
bearing
if that's
the lead.
true, that's bad. If she's picking up the torch, that is bad.
Bad news.
Bernie
bad.
is bad now, everyone.
Well, it's bearing the lead in the fact that, like, they're letting you think, like, oh, okay, if I give her money and Bernie is part of this saying or whatever, or even if an organization believes it and they donate money, then they're kind of in this idea of that must mean I'm donating to their campaign, and that's completely not the truth, completely misleading. That's not what's going on.
Well, you are kinda. I mean, she's a Democrat, and you're donating to Act Blue, which is the overarching Democrat money pool, and you can throw your money into that. I think it is not misleading at all to say that she's going to be like Bernie, because what did Bernie do every time he ran for anything? He drops out at the end, endorses the Democrat, and gives them all of his money. She will do exactly that.
That's what I was getting at. Like, you're not endorsing her campaign. I think that these people are believing.
You're endorsing Gavin Newsom and fucking what's her name, Liz Cheney. That's going to be your ticket. And you're probably be like, hey, we love Liz Cheney.
At the very most, they might propose her for vice president to try to, like, capitalize on that and act like they learned from their mistakes. Like, oh, we heard you. You really like AOC. It's totally cool. We're all about her too. She knows the thing. She's super rad. We're into it. You're into it.
Did Nancy Pelosi ever get a big position like she was Speaker of the House, which I think AOC is being fully groomed for if things keep going how they are. But, like, if you put her in an actual position like a cabinet or something, like Hillary Clinton after she was Secretary of State, she had her failed presidential run, but, like, that kind of, like, that's the end. That's the equivalent of, like, killing the character off, and then you go be a lobbyist. Like, your last in the public view one is when you get a cabinet post, because, like, then you sour yourself because you're no longer, like, an elected representative. You're now an appointed person, and you do the dirty work you're supposed to do, and then you get the hell out of there. I think she is much more valuable doing what she's doing now, being the cheerleader mascot of the Democrat Party, trying to act like we aren't the Democrats. We're actually a secret different party that you haven't been seeing, and we're going to reveal ourselves any day now. And they've been doing that shit since 2016.
We're the new cool guys. We're the Democrats. Like,
they want to be like Canada, the new Democrat Party, but they're
right. That's exactly. And because they want to use her and Bernie to pretend like old guard, new guard. We're
a guy
changing
who's not
things
technically a Democrat,
right?
And a lady. Who, okay. Sorry.
Yeah,
Bernie is not. He's an independent, right? Independent.
No, well, I don't know. Actually, at this,
he's not registered.
He's kind of flip flop on that. I think
he runs as an independent.
Independent when it's convenient, Democrat when it comes down to it. Because he always works with Democrats. And there was the whole thing about, there was a, I don't want to call it a dust up because it kind of was, but it was like legitimate, completely legitimate to do the protest to do it, and say that, it was for Palestine at one of his rallies. And of course they got drug out. The signage got torn down. Multiple times. He said Israel has the right to defend themselves. No, the fuck they don't. And pretty much nobody agrees with them at this point. And
they chant Free Palestine at his rallies, and he kind of just is like,
and then they jump about just as much as if it were a Trump rally or something. So
you just move on. You just let them think that I think that.
Right. What is the problem with that, right? Like, because the big ticket donors don't want that. And before everything blew up and there was all this news going on and yada yada, that's kind of where we were headed with the show, because if you may have seen, there's this new documentary that came out. I sent a message to you about it. I don't know if you got to see it. It's pretty long. But
I watched the first of 2.
Did you?
I did not get into the AOC stuff, but I watched the first hour and a half.
Well, yeah, the first one is about lobbying and it's called the Dark Money Game. First hour is about lobbying and gerrymandering. second hour is about dark money, essentially the history of dark money. Because what's fascinating about it is they at first it seems like as you watch they kind of let the Democrats off the hook, but then they don't at the end, and you realize they're saying, hey, both parties are doing this, both parties are corrupt. Also, if while the Republicans were doing all of this horrible shit, standing behind the anti-abortion movement, the evangelical movement, because that's where the money was, and they could literally launder money through the whole situation. That's where they get to the point of like saying like, oh, okay, so you're not hearing us talk about Democrats because they were just sitting around doing nothing during this time, and they kind of pull out the point about Merrick Garland and how McConnell wouldn't let the vote go through or whatever. And it's like, if they'd have just timed it differently, or what's her face would have Ruth Bader Ginsburg would have fucking stepped down when she should have instead of dying in her seat. Like, things would have been a lot different. So they were playing the game too. And I think that they ultimately make that pretty clear. But you're sort of like, are we just doing a January 6th anti-Republican thing? Because that narrative gets old too. Nobody's going to listen to that shit anymore either, except Democrats, so, but no, it was pretty unbiased. And for political documentary and a long political documentary, it was actually really interesting to see how all of these people fit into it. But when we get to the present, we start back in the 80s, 90s about, where they start developing super PACs and they start developing Citizens United and start talking about that corporations have rights, like human people have rights and like all that stupid shit, and how that they were able to use the evangelical and anti-abortion movement to push all of this shit through. To make it so you could hide the money, because there were always limits on money. And then actually John McCain got involved in some legislation to try to stop that, control campaign finance. And it was called McCain-Feingold. And then they got that overturned. And at that point it was game on. So now we are where we are, where it's like this person spent the most money on any campaign ever run in the history, whatever, right out in the open. And usually the person with the most money wins, not always though, which is super funny when they don't, because we saw how
out the chart.
What's that?
They pulled out the like who wins versus how much money chart, and I was like, yes. Oh, I know that chart.
Yes, and there was a big point about like, if we go back and Monday Morning Quarterback, the Harris campaign, they tried that and it didn't work. They, at the end, they spent their money so poorly. At the end, they were like, "I'm sorry, later force that we can't afford to pay you." So, like, they started cutting people off. So that's where we're headed.
Watching through this is on HBO. It's on HBO and Hulu and stuff. I pirated it, which is why I only got through one of the episodes, because it took really unbelievably on documentaries called like The Dark Money Game that are about like U.S. politics and stuff. Not a ton of seeders for me to download off of on the Pirate Bay, but yes. I did get there. I did watch it. It's also funny. I think that anything that's a documentary. That'd be like a law I make if I get to become the ruler of the world. That's what I would do. All documentaries must just be free, because it's like this is informational. You need to.
Yes.
Anything
I agree.
Like
I 100%
all scientific
agree.
papers. You should not be paywalled behind reading the results of a scientific study, especially because if you're in America and it's an American study, you probably already paid for that study. So it's
right. And, well, that and then that is actually what brings us up to the present today, because you get up today, the news is. Over the weekend, the news is the government is now going to start collecting on loans up to the point of student loans, up to the point of potentially garnishing them. I think they'll probably get stopped along the way, by lawsuits and things like that. And
it's going to be people moving forward. Like, people already have the student loans. You're probably, unless you start refinancing, don't do that. You're probably locked into the rule set that you originally signed for, and it's hard for them to just be like, oh, the rules are different. It's like, no, I did sign a contract, and so far, they don't just blow through those too often.
Yeah. So that's going on. And now the FDA is like, we don't exist anymore. We're done. All due. So we're not going to check your food anymore for bird flu or anything specifically. And they blame Trump and Doge and Musk and everything like that, which is like obviously that's the reason why. But I feel like they really aren't putting much effort into giving a shit about.
We were getting the like effed up lunch meat and shit 2 years into the Biden administration. We had the salmonella peanut butter. I don't know if people remember. 2 years into the Biden administration. And like the point I always make, it's just a thing that's been going on for a long time, and now suddenly it's like brought into a spotlight to talk a bit more about the dark money game and kind of summarize this. So it's not as I'm going through, I'm listening, I'm going, wow, they're really emphasizing certain points. Like they spend a lot of time talking about the religious right, what we would know as like the pre-2000 leading into religious right of essentially people going, we want this result. How can we achieve that result? And they realize, oh, if you just start buying people off, well, what are the obstacles to buying people off? Oh, well, they're this and this. Well, cool, we'll get this guy elected who will get rid of that rule. So then we get this guy elected who then get rid of that rule. Then get
Which
this
is
judge.
what we are constantly talking about on this show all the time. Every single point they make in that documentary, I'm just like, because that's literally all that we talk about all the time.
And this is an example that is happening hundreds of times, like copy and pasted throughout like the system. That's why I always harp on how it's not just like what guy do we take out who is responsible for all of the evil, who is Skeletor, who we can remove, and then the whole thing falls apart, which it doesn't exist because the machinations of the system itself are it. Like the issue are the rules, not really the people, because you swap out new people and the same rule set is still there. While the religious right is doing this over here, you have frickin' Monsanto, whoever, doing it over there. You have the oil companies doing it over, like the Koch brothers even come in, where they're half religious right, half oil. Oh, and like I don't think like if you were swapped out everybody in the U.S. Christians with Muslims, and it's the same kind of idea, they'd be doing it with the Muslim right, or they'd be doing it with the frickin'
whatever the majority,
Scientologist right. Like it's just the tool with which what is the reason those guys had influence, power? That Leo guy they keep bringing up, who's like, look at him, he's really important, just seems to show up around presidents all the time, and then whoever he likes becomes their cabinet member. Did he have power because of his belief in Christ, or did he have power because of how much shit he owns? These are like high-end, heute, it's a German word, hot bourgeoisie, the big bourgeois, not the like guy who owns your frickin' corner gas station, but the guy who owns the gas that goes into the gas station. Gas station.
Ultra.
You know what I mean? The people who get meetings with the president just on a whim and then just peace out for a little bit, then show back up and keep the fact that when you had Obama getting elected, I think it was Citibank, they made they had an email. It was just a list of people they think should be in his cabinet, and every one of those motherfuckers got on. Like it's just Citibank just chose his cabinet. Like it's not so much that it's I think it focuses a little too much on the like, oh look, these horrible Christian because it's a boogeyman that a lot of the people watching this, like the people who it's really written for and made for, are gonna be like, oh, I love hating these people. Like so it's kind of a convenient target, but it's freaking everything. AOC is part of this now. She's been in that for a while. She's kind of groomed for it since she started working for the Kennedys and like her late teens.
And then
so I'm kind of
CIA and
This part 2 had like no cedars, so I don't know if it is downloaded yet. It probably hasn't, and I think I gave up on it just because it was I don't know. Part 1 had a bunch of stuff. Part 2 just didn't.
Eventually,
so I didn't get to see the modern bits, but I see where they were going with it. Because they ended at, I think, it kind of did go up to, like, modern day, where it just explains, like, look, super PACs, they now exist. And actually, the reasoning behind Citizens United it's not the idea, at least the stuff in the legal language, isn't that corporations are people, which is how it's commonly portrayed, but the idea of it's not that corporations have a right to speak, but if money is what is required to speak, to, like, if you need in order to have freedom of the printing press, you must be able to afford a printing press, or in this case, like an internet and a server, or really a website, a Washington Post if you're a Mr. Bezos. So your speech is indeed restricted by how much money you can spend, and they had that in the inverse, which was our speech is restricted because we are not allowed to spend as much money as it takes to speak. And I'm like, that isn't actually wrong. It just shows that the system is fucked. Because they are correct, and that my speech is being limited because I'm not allowed to spend enough money to speak, because that's how it works in our system.
Yeah, that's where we are. Because I mean, it's like a history of like, because a lot of the people who are still now like decrepitly hanging on to their seats were involved in all of this throughout the history of it. So it's an interest. It's almost like
same people.
Yeah, it's the same people. And what's interesting about it is like you know that these guys were always bad guys, but you don't necessarily know what exactly their roles were in this, that, the other. So they do break it down for you in that way. But what I think the most interesting thing about it is that it shows you ultimately like where they found vulnerabilities that they could exploit these to hide the money essentially and get the money through, and that was like the evangelical right.
Which also helps with Christianity because people have vague
Yes.
positive feelings. So when it's like, oh, you're being mean to the church, like it's
Right.
easier to pass if it's
Right.
oh, Jesus wants this.
Yes, and so and then the anti-abortion thing, like that those people are having abortions for their mistresses all the time. That it's a fact. They don't actually care. It's not like it's some sort of really moral issue for these people. They're just using it as a platform to launder money, to put money through different things, to pay to play. The government is essentially, it's strategy. The government is essentially turned into a pay to play situation. Going back to Nixon tried to start a lot of this stuff in Nixon's cabinet, but they were all too stupid. And then it really came down to having to be Reagan and Reagan's cabinet, who were really hardcore criminals and really smart about how to do this coming in. And they were able to make this happen. They weren't able to make it happen in exactly their lifetimes, but they were able to make it happen for now. And there was a point made where Anton Scalia of the Supreme Court had said something to the effect of like anti-abortion Roe versus Wade is never going to happen in our lifetime, and it didn't in his technically. But so he was right. But the guy that was talking about that had been said to it like was talking about it like, okay, like so it did happen, like this stuff is happening, and there are constant draconian laws going in all over the country. They were waiting for Trump to get in first term, second term, so they could do it. Indiana in particular, I've talked about this many times. You really would think Indiana is just a fart on the map and not special or particular in any kind of way, but it always is a bellwether state when it comes to testing out really fucked up laws. And when other states see it working, then they make it happen. And this whole money game works on every level of government. So, if you're like, why do they never change hands? And, well, that's got to do with gerrymandering. That's got to do with where the money is, the pay to play, and now it's just all
prove yourself to be a useful pawn. Like that's why you see freaking Mitch McConnell. Like, oh wow, he has hair and it's dark. Oh, he's been in freaking Congress forever. If you prove yourself a useful peon, you will stay. If you look through his political or anybody's political history, that's why you find all these inconsistencies. Where like, why are they voting for this year, but then this year, oh, it's the opposite completely. Because they aren't there for like having principled positions or being able to solve problems for the American actual like the people, not the like 20 people that they see every year who they want to make sure have like extra money. They are there because they can get the thing done. They've proven themselves effective. They can follow they follow the right strategies, blah blah blah. And if they didn't, someone else would just be in their place. And you're like, but Pepper, we have fucking elections, and it's like really. Yeah. So the reason we have all these layers of obfuscation, you can get whoever you want in there. There's always a freaking knob you can turn to get the right person to lose or win. Yes. And if that doesn't work, suddenly you have a scandal. And
right. And that's why you get such anti-voting sentiment on the left. And again, the left is not united. Like, we are not a monolith.
I'm pro-democracy. We do not have democracy being expressed in our current voting system. That is my issue.
Yeah, that's what it is. We're not. I think you would find that to be true. Like across the board, leftists really are not anti-democratic. We're anti whatever the hell this.
That's what the commies are accused of. Because they're like, oh, you guys love when people don't get to vote, and it's like, well, how come through historically all of the examples I can bring up show the will of like what people want and what happens are like this close, and in America, it's like what people want and what happens, and they're really far away. Like, which one is democracy?
Yeah, exactly. And I think also you have to play into the fact that, and they've all had their hands in this too, and you really don't have to get conspiratorial about it. There's been a very consistent dumbing down of America by, strapping the education and now we're looking at Reagan tried to do it. Now we're looking at it again, the Trump administration trying to dismantle the Department of Education. Why do you think they would want to do that? Why would that be?
That's my question, because it's very effective at making us stupid right now. Why you gotta, I want to destroy the Department of Education for very different reasons.
Right?
Because it sucks. It's horrible. I've been in it. I see what you learn in these schools.
Bad news. And then look at again, No Child Left Behind with the Bush era. Like they've been chiseling away at this thing that already sucked to begin with.
Oh my God, the DeVos family was mentioned like 50 times there too.
Yes.
Betsy DeVos wants private education because it would make her and her family a lot of money. It's that easy. It's not about like, I believe children in this way. It has nothing to fucking do with children. This could be cows we're talking about.
Yeah,
She would
if it
make
was gonna
this
make
much
money,
more
actually.
money.
Yes, and that's where we are right now, and that's why this was such a big kind of a big moment for us to see this, because it's like this is what we're always talking about, and now somebody legit, not just us on the internet, is talking about it. So it's like I hope as many people see this as possible and see, because it's not repellent, it's not hard to understand, it's not like watching C-SPAN. It's actually very engaging and interesting. So
I wish it had a little less scapegoating. I wish it would get to the systemic bit, because I could definitely see people watching this and at the end just going, yep, it's just those bad 7 people. If we could just remove that Leo guy and the DeVosses and Scalia and these couple others, America would be perfect.
Yeah, you cut the head off a snake and 2 more come up in its place.
Exactly.
So that's essentially
which hopefully people get when they start talking about AOC in the second episode. Like, look, it just continues. It's just a new set of people doing the exact same shit.
Right. And that's exactly right. There will always be a new generation of people willing to do anything for money and power. And you can't stop that. Once that ball is rolling downhill, like there's nowhere to make that stop. There's no way to make that stop. And me, as I come into this, it's like I don't know what the real end game of American politics is. I know that we're not there. I don't even think we're anywhere even close, because a lot of people like to use the term end stage capitalism, but that implies we are in the end. We're just in the most horrible version of what has come to pass so far. We could be decades and decades and decades from the end of everything getting worse. But I know that a lot of us can look back. Probably anybody over the age of probably 25 can look back over time and be like, shit was always really, really fucking bad, but it was nowhere near how bad it is now in every single way. The way that everything is by subscription, the way that you can't live, you can't do anything. And it's just like, this is absolutely by design. And it's exactly what you were saying. Like, why is there such a gigantic gulf between what people want and what the government is doing? And that is because they are a runaway government with runaway capitalism, which is my preferred term, to just like monetize and scrape all the resources out of everyone and squeeze everyone to death. Because again, as we always end up bringing up China as a model, that's the very opposite of what happens when you do that. That's why the world is freaking out right now about China. Like, oh my God, like they're just blown away by the light up buildings, for Christ's sake. Like, we don't even get into the dirt of it. We're just like, look at their cities. Oh my God, we barely have roads. Like that's basically where that comes from. So people are just really blown away. And then China was really blown away when they found out what's going on here, which we did not realize was a secret. But, all of America jumped off TikTok and jumped over the ocean into China in our jalopy and jumped off all disease ridden, begging for help. Like everything is horrible and we're dying here. They didn't know. And now they're basically showing the world who is boss. And that's where all this tariff nonsense is going, because China does not need us. They're dealing with other people. They're working with other people. They're working direct to customers now in America. They have won. If there was something to win, they have won. And now that we've got the stupidest, most pliable, uninformed idiots running things, thinking that they're really smart, because only the dumbest people think they're the smartest people. That's really where we are at in this. And you really don't even have to think about like dark money or anything anymore, because it's just stupid. It's just right out in the open. The stupid people are, like the patients are running the asylum at this point. And no, I don't see an end game. I don't see end stage capitalism. So, and then that's kind of where the documentary stops. Is like, well, okay, who knows what's coming next? Hold your butts. That's basically where we are.
I'm now almost all the way through Super Imperialism by Michael Hudson, and I'm gonna have something to read from that. It's just so big. I'm like, what is the best couple of pages I could show to everybody? But that's Michael Hudson. It was written in the 70s, but it's now I think around the third edition, which I read the foreword and it's kind of funny where it's like the people who made sure this got to like a third edition and got this to its current state, which is far more readable than the first, are these like 6 Chinese guys who like living in China who really like Chinese economists who are like, hey, this is a really good book, we should translate this into a few different languages. And I'm like, man, China just freaking having my back every step of the way here. I can read this because of China. All right, but in it, I have more optimism, I guess, towards the things falling apart, the reaching the end here, just because as I understand more and more of how modern economics work, or really our very fake version of economics, which I rail on about a lot. Remember, we don't even study actual economics. We study a perfect model that has never been and never will be, and that's how you learn and get PhDs and freaking. Michael Hudson super hates everybody who's gotten the economics Nobel Prize in the last like 20 years. Who's like, it's a Nobel Prize in what? Every other scientist has to be able to like prove something. Economics is the only one where you can win a prize for shit that is just wrong, and then 10 years later, wow, that was super wrong. Anyway, enjoy your Nobel Prize. And like, you can tell he has some kind of like chip on his shoulder because he's like, I'm doing actual fucking economics over here. I'm not getting Nobel Prizes. Like, I'm working my ass off for so many books. Look at this. Look, Nobel, because he says like, look, this is an instrument of propaganda, essentially, like the Nobel Committee and all that. I mean, it's given out by like a king too, which is funny. But Obama has a Nobel
Obama
Peace.
one for nothing. Like they're just like, we really like him a lot. Here you go.
They said like this is a prize of optimism, of hope. They're like, we hope that if we're gonna give you this, then you're not gonna do any wars. And then he super did. But they keep going through in super imperialism, and we're going through the period between like the end of World War II and the 70s when we get off the gold standard, because it's just been a series of the U.S. just kind of doing whatever the hell it wants, and nobody in Europe being like, hey, stop it. Like France throughout history is kind of like, we don't like this, but then they aren't like big enough to buy themselves. Go for it. We keep giving Germany all these preferential deals, and Germany's like, sure, man, we'll totally accept these heinous interest rates. And then we look at England like, look, Germany was okay with it. England, come on. Why won't you play ball?
You got to do whatever we say forever.
They're trying to figure out how to keep, because you were supposed to keep a certain amount of gold. Whatever money you're effing around with the IMF back in the day, you're supposed to have at least 20% of it available in physical gold. So if you have 1 billion in gold, you could do up to 20 billion in fucking shenanigans. But it was at least at like a 1 to 20 situation, like how your bank, if you put in $1 billion, if I put in $1 billion in the bank is allowed to make loans far above that $1 billion, even though they only are holding that single billion.
Right.
So the U.S. is going like, look, man, we need to do more debt, but we're limited to this 20% of our total gold reserves situation. So let's do this complete weird nonsense accounting shit so we can technically count that gold twice. We'll count it once as its reserve currency situation, then count it again in this other weird bookkeeping. And then they're sitting around, it's like 2 years later, like, how about we come up with a special kind of note that isn't money and isn't gold, but we could let people buy shit on this receipt we wrote, and I know it sounds like I'm just describing fiat currency here also, but they're like, basically, how about we add a second currency, like V-Bucks? We got to add V-Bucks to the economy, then that'll make all of our shit completely work. And it just reminds me of this very famous meme, and it's funny you brought up China, where it's at the top it's China, do nothing, win, and at the bottom it's the U.S. just doing fucking crazy shit, just like, maybe this will work, how about this, how about this, how about this, maybe this, and it has worked for so long. I mean, this is not about economics, this is about like our foreign policy and how we did all this crazy international stuff.
It's all connected. The money is going through all of that shit. There's money in war, so yeah, but that's correct. That's really correct. Because what did China do? Minded their own fucking business for 40 years, literally, and made a fucking utopia. Okay, all right, I use it loosely, but I mean, if we're comparing it's apples to apples here, America's condition of living and economic state and trust.
They have done capitalism correctly.
So, it's like, yeah, no, obviously no great empire is utopian. Okay, I get that. But comparatively it is. I mean, like, compared to if we just magically tomorrow got to have everything like, oh, we're China now, instant, like, we would be like, what? Like,
They're the measuring stick because they're the kid who started out far less advantaged. It'd be like if you were doing very poorly in school and your mom pointed out the really poor kid. And it's like, look, man, he lives in the fucking dirt and he's kicking your ass. What's happening? Like, why? That's why I bring up China. Not because China's better or I want to be better or because it's utopia. Because they started their industrialization in 1951. We started ours in 1776.
Nothing to show
How
for
the
it.
fuck?
Nothing. Except tearing up the rest of the world and for resources, basically, and domination. So you said that you have a more optimistic view of this coming to an end then.
Because it's got to fall apart. There's been too much crazy stuff. We're running out. There's no gizmos left. This tariff thing. The reason he's doing, I'm reading this back and going, oh, I see why he wants to do the tariffs. Because like when America quote was great, because we're supposed to be making America great again, right? You go back to when we didn't have like income tax. When did we not have income tax? When we had 30% tariffs on everything because the one money made up for the other. And actually, fucking Michael Hudson threw this out in an interview. I'm like, oh shit, he wrote about this, and he's the one saying it, like, because they're asking him, of course, economic. What do you think about these tariffs? 85-year-old Michael Hudson, old ass man. And he's like, well, you see, in the economy, there's been I'm making him sound like RFK. He doesn't talk like that. He's like, look, he wants to get rid of income tax, and he's like, when did we not have income tax? When we had tariffs. Therefore, do tariffs, and then I guess we can get rid of income tax, because they want to move that tax from one of the few very, very rich people taxes that they still kind of have to pay. They can't quite get out of all of it. Income tax, they have to pay a little bit. They're trying to move that down onto us, onto the poors, in the form of tariffs for the shit that we buy. And I'm reading through, going like, oh, okay, 1960, whatever, our tariff level was at this. And you know how we were talking about how they like made up reciprocal tariff numbers for other countries, where they'd be like, well, 20% is your tariff, but then the other 20% is your currency manipulation, devaluation, blah, blah, blah. So actually your tariff is really this level. Guess what everyone was mad about us for in the late 60s? Well, you see, we had a 10% tariff, but then we would demand and enforce a 10% currency devaluation on countries such as Italy, France, Japan actually was one of the first ones to do it. They're like, sure, dude, we'll do whatever you want. You nuked us twice. We'll put the yen wherever you want. And they let the yen, they floated the yen because everything used to be held to gold. Not because gold has magical properties, just because we picked a thing that other currencies like pivot around. Like, how do we decide what a US and Canadian dollar are worth in comparison to one another? You either just go, made up number, or you go, well, we're all going to pick this one thing, and then all of our currencies their value is in relation to how much gold it buys. And that actually does make some kind of sense. It could be anything. It could have been plutonium. It could have been fucking tin. We picked gold because, you know, we've liked it as human beings for a really long time.
Shiny.
Just back through ancient Egypt and it's shiny. We like it. It's really hard to it's nearly impossible to destroy. Also, that's why you can just put it in a fucking tomb somewhere and it'll be totally fine. 1,000 years later, there's many reasons they ended up with gold, but once we went off the gold standard in 1971, it was really like the late 60s, really like 1968, but when we de facto went off the gold standard, we forced a bunch of currencies to devalue. So we literally were doing these currency manipulation tariffs that were very upset. Well, Trump is very upset, I guess, at these other countries for doing, where we both had a small tariff of like 10%, and then we had another, the German mark must be devalued by 12% or the IMF is going to do shit to you. So then they did. So really now it's 12 plus the 10, and then you get that dumb number that we had in the big chart on the side. And I'm like, oh my God, this book written in the 70s, since nothing fundamentally has changed in the economy and world economics since then, I'm just reading about now from 50 years in the past. I cannot suggest it highly enough. Super Imperialism by Michael Hudson. It is so relevant, and it's not that hard. It's not that bad to read. You gotta fucking buckle down, because it is nonfiction. You're reading an economics book.
Yeah. My thought is they'll just keep figuring out ways to just keep making it worse, because that's basically what happened. If you look at everything all together, like we just figured out ways to keep making it worse and making it worse, because we think it couldn't get worse now. Like the 90s, people thought it couldn't get worse. You know.
In the 70s, gold was $35 an ounce, which it was artificially held down to for a long, long time. Currently, it is $3,200 for an ounce of gold. So if you want to get a more accurate, consistent measure of how much things have gone psycho, we are at 100 times the inflation, or whatever you want to call it. Like, we've devalued our currency to that extent. It does have to it's got to fall apart soon. Like, we are.
I hope so.
Unless I don't know what other thing they could slap on to what we've already done, like fake second, third, tertiary currencies and notes and all this bullshit. What is left? Because because now we have China sitting there. It's the one thing that is different is that you now have very much viable economic alternatives where before you were forced to deal with.
I hope that you're right, because now that there is something like China and Russia who can, in BRICS, in the BRICS alliance, there is opposition now, because this was all going on when America was U.S. #1, hooray, type of a situation. But you had something you wanted to cover regarding the immigration situation.
We got a fun little immigration rundown.
I wanted to make sure we got to it and didn't get too far off track. So.
Oh yeah, that's the end of my economic things anyway. I'll be back with more Michael.
Michael
Hudson for the rest of my life.
This is ongoing. We're covering this as we go. So, headline: We live in hell. Here's why.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this in order, and my point will emerge as we go. If you recognize patterns, it'll take you about 5 seconds to see what I'm going to do this. So here we are. We are in, what year is it? Oh yeah, we're on Fox News. We are. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Hold a second. There we go.
Oh no.
We are reading from. Yeah, we're going in reverse order here. That was the modern one. So we're reading from the. This is from the bushcenter.org, which is the George W. Bush Center, the director of the Bush Institute SMU Economic. It might actually be both Bushes. It'd be kind of more efficient to combine them, him and his dad. But this is the George W. Bush Institute, and it's an article going.
No jab.
It's an article going. U.S. immigration press is like, let's explain mass deportations, because that was a heavy criticism of George W. back in the day, before the 9/11 kind of took over everything. He was the I'm going to deport everyone president. What does it mean to be undocumented? Okay, we're not going to read all of these, of course, but I want you to get an idea for what we're dealing with. This was written in 2024. This is modern. They wrote this. This is what you get if you go to learn about. This is what the George W. Bush Institute wants to put out into the world, that mass deportations are actually probably pretty good. How does this population affect the economy, right? It's like undocumented immigrants do not. I don't know why it's. I mean, I guess if you're really young reading this, but it needs to make sure you know what it means to be. I am in a country that I'm not legally allowed to work in.
When you're writing your school report, you use
what is mass deportation? Who would be affected? What is the likelihood and feasibility of deportations on the scale? Deporting 11 million people is nearly impossible to do given the current resource and capacity constraints of the federal government. It would be incredibly expensive, damaging to the economy, and disruptive to communities. A 2015 American Action Forum report estimated it would cost $400 billion to $600 billion. Take 20 years and result in over $1 trillion in lost GDP. So now I guess they're against mass deportation. Can the undocumented people become U.S. citizens? Well, legislation has been proposed multiple times since 2006. Blah, blah, blah. All right. So we have George W. Bush. He was deporting a lot of people, but I don't know. It's weird because there wasn't as much internet. So when you're looking stuff up, it's harder to find. I had a hard time finding a specific scandal of W. Bush taking somebody who everyone's just like, guy had no reason to be deported. This is completely the wrong guy. He had nothing. Blah, blah. Of course, you heard about a lot of deportations, but that was also when the whole like illegal immigrant thing was becoming like a political football that we all run around with and fight about in the 2000s.
They were doing drugs and they were killing people and whatnot.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and all that. And also, it was a very hoorah America time because of Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan, and mission accomplished, 9/11. You got to, take yourself back mentally to the time when that was basically exactly what they wanted you to be feeling, like America, white.
A better researcher than me can probably pull out somebody where it's like George W. Bush sent this fucking random housewife to North Korea or like, but it's not as easy to pull up. So then we have this. Okay, we have this shows up here. We have President Obama. This is the ACLU. Remember when they weren't complete, Israel hacks? I guess like the point of the ACLU now is to like call you anti-Semitic and try to get you fired. But before they were doing stuff like this. President Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act, which should be a thing that should set off neurons activated. They re-sign it all the time, and that's where you can throw in your real weird surveillance laws and that's where it wasn't Maxine Waters. It was somebody. It was like there was one single congressperson who voted against like the expansion of one of these National Defense Authorization Acts that made it possible for what we do now, our perpetual wars that we never actually have to declare. That was some George W. Bush new law stuff. Hooray, now he can just be in military operations until the end of time, and Congress can't just, like, shut it down. Because it's like, you can only go to war for, I think it's like a year or something, and then Congress had to approve it, or it had to stop. And we weren't doing that. Like, Vietnam was not a war, was it? Did we declare war?
You could just not do it. Do what you want anyway.
You already could do what you want, but now it's fully official in the rules. You can really just do whatever you want with war. But anyway, this is an Obama one. That was a W. Bush one. This is an Obama Defense Authorization Act. While Obama issued a signing statement saying he had serious reservations about the provisions, even though he's signing it, you're the president, Barry. The statement only applies to how his administration would use the authorities granted by the NDAA, and would not affect how the law is interpreted by subsequent administrations. The White House had threatened to veto an earlier version of the NDAA, but reversed course shortly before Congress voted on the final bill. President Obama's action today is a blight on his legacy, because he will be forever known as the president who signed indefinite detention without charge into trial into law, said Anthony Romero, ACLU executive director. The statute is particularly dangerous because it has no temporal time or geographic limitations. Where have we been hearing that phrase? No temporal or geographic limitations, meaning it doesn't matter where or when. You can fucking grab people from wherever, whenever, and can be used, and for as long as you want. They could just hold you forever. And can be used by this and future presidents to militarily detain people captured far from any battlefield. ACLU will fight worldwide detention authority wherever we can, be it in court, in Congress, or internationally. Want to say anything before I keep filibustering?
Well, no, I'm interested in hearing more about the direction this is going, because, it was just not. I think if I was going to comment on anything, it would be like in the zeitgeist. It really wasn't in people's minds. Nobody cared about any of this stuff.
You'll hear the famous sentence that Obama suspended habeas corpus, and then you go, that guy's a right-wing psychopath, and you look it up. It's like, no, he did though.
Yeah, no, right. But the thing is, like, if we go back to George W. Nobody cared because we were getting misdirected into, the America hoorah.
Terrorism.
It's obviously a good thing. Terrorism, mission accomplished. Then when Obama was doing it, or Clinton and Obama, it's like, well, they're really smart. They're lawyers. They know what they're doing, obviously. They're following the law. Like, these people are illegal. They're following the law. They're just doing what they're obligated to do. So, like, that's where the that kind of the head was, like the hive mind. Like, Democrats seem to garner more trust from the public, or they used to, whereas Republicans were just like, well, I mean, all right. I mean, there's wars and whatever whenever they're in power, so I guess okay, hoorah.
I mean,
so
you see,
that's
even
where
the
we
ACLU
were.
here. The ACLU even here is like, look, the fact that this isn't limited to people captured in the context of an actual armed conflict. So, like, there are kind of rules written down for this, but it's for prisoners of war. It's we're in a war and we caught a guy. It's pretty clear what's going on. He's like, no, I can just use this on anybody, anywhere. And it even says, under the Bush administration, similar claims of worldwide detention authority were used to hold even a U.S. citizen detained on U.S. soil in military custody, and many assert now in Congress that the NDAA should be used in the same way again. So you see, it's been kind of a stoppy-starty. They've been feeling out. Because, W. Bush was, Guantanamo became a big deal under W. Bush, not under Obama. But unfortunately, Obama, he got a crazy kind of amnesia. And as soon as he was in office, he's like, man, that Guantanamo is really convenient. And couldn't quite get it shut down.
Right.
So now, we move on to IRAP. I think it's like, what is it? Refugee Rights website that I'm reading from here. And this is this is 2024. Look at this.
Yeah.
Weird.
Really recent.
But you see, it was October 2024, before the election. 131 human rights organizations demand Biden administration stop detaining refugees at Guantanamo Bay. Today, 131 human rights organizations sent Biden an open letter demanding the U.S. government stop indefinitely detaining refugees at Guantanamo Bay, abandon plans to expand the detention of Haitians fleeing violence, and allow asylum seekers who travel by boat to seek protection in the United States. So, like, it's not that Trump is doing good things that we like and approve of. It's that this is a pattern of bullshit that's been going on since George W. Bush and almost definitely before, you just hear more about it now.
Yes.
And you've had administrations signing it more and more into law that this is just totally okay. So, like, if it's totally okay under law, what are you supposed to do? Like, before, if they're doing things that are illegal, you at least can go, well, that's illegal. Judges, courts, come do something. And the judges and courts are kind of doing stuff now, as we'll see in the last one of these. But, like, it's just letter of the law. It's like you were saying about, it's not even dark money anymore. It's just money. It's not like they're doing illegal detention. They're just doing detention that is fully legal.
Exactly. And then you have to ask yourself, again, you don't even have to get conspiratorial about it. You have to ask yourself, okay, who is benefiting from doing this? Because they said, what you said at the top of your presentation was that, like, this is not feasible. It's not good. It's bad for community. It's bad for morale. It's bad for the GDP. It's bad all the way the fuck around. So who is benefiting from that? Like, obviously, like the prison industrial complex and prison labor. Like those, and probably other people I'm not thinking of at this moment. But like, that obviously they have a stake in this, because why else would it be going on when I think if you polled the public, they'd be like, nah, I think it's pretty much fine. I think everything's pretty much fine. This really doesn't seem like a problem. And every one of these administrations, you pretty much could have asked that question, and I think most people would have been like, I don't really think it's a big deal. But now it's been turned in where it was mostly ignored in the previous generations. Now it's administrations, I should say. Now it's like that was a tenet of Trump's first thing. They're the bad hombres, they're not bringing their best people, or like they're killers or rapists or whatever. Like that was they used to really motivate the MAGA base. And again, not because it was fucking up the economy or really causing any kind of community problems, but because of I distracted myself, but because of like somebody wasn't benefiting that should have been benefiting from themselves, benefiting, and they wanted to get a benefit of it. And he knew that he could rally his base by playing into racism. That's really all it comes down to. It really wasn't a matter of like economic problems or issues or anything like that on the big scale, but how are you going to get people interested in it and act like you're doing something about it by playing into their racist tendencies?
Well, remember, Trump's Latino turnout was about 50-50.
Yeah,
which was a large increase from the first time, which is not even saying that, like, because you can analyze this from a thing of like, well, a lot of Hispanic people are also racist. Because that's the thing, though. If you live around people, all of these blank type of people vote as this block, blank type of people behave in this way, like as a rule, as if we're like different kinds of Pokemon and not like different, and not just different people. It's people in general. The largest section of the middle class, at least in my area, are quite Hispanic. I don't know if it's quite more than half as I'm saying this, because I'll look up stats and make me look like an idiot. But there is a relatively large Latino working class in Phoenix and in Arizona, and a lot of them are second, third, fourth, fifth, heck, 100th, whatever. Some of them lived here from time immemorial, generation Mexicans, and a lot of the exact same sentiment of they're gonna come take our jobs and they're making my area full of crime and shitty. That sentiment is absolutely felt about Guatemalans, Hondurans, Venezuelans, etc. Like, it's not just all Latinos are one people, all Asians are one people, and they all speak the language of Asian, and they all eat a food known as Asian. And
but
it's like, dude, Korea,
that...
Japan, and China do not fucking like each other. Like, there's
but you can still use that on people who are ignorant of that fact because they don't care. Assume... like that's where it's interesting. And that whole took our gerbs, that was back in when the handover to Obama happened. Like, everybody was like, that was the right's argument then, is when it came against to immigration, was, they're taking our gerbs and he's going to let it happen. Like, that was the whole
sentiment exists within various segments of the working class here in the U.S. They see that there are issues. They see that their paychecks are low and their bills are high. Yes. And it is very easy to go, it must be the people who are here, who are technically breaking rules. Like, but the onus is always put on them. Like, the agency, rather, is put on people who, like, walk hundreds of miles to get to a place with no advantages, and not the companies that it turns out, because we've seen all kinds of headlines about we can't get anybody to pick vegetables. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, it turns out this labor is required, and I'm over here going, why do you require borderline slave labor to operate as an industry? Is that
that's
possibly
not a functioning system.
Yeah,
You know?
Guatemalans and like no human is born for the purpose of picking your vegetables or performing very, very low wage jobs. Like, they aren't like liberals will be accidentally, I say in quotes, accidentally racist, because that's the assertion they'll make. It's like, we can't deport all the Mexicans. We need them to be our servants. And
Right,
it's like, oh my God, wait, that's not it either.
Yeah. And you know, in the same token, you go like, nobody gives a fuck about a Canadian that's here illegally. Like, nobody cares. It's all got to do with,
because Canadians aren't the type of people that you're getting in to work for $5 a day,
Yeah,
or $5
right?
an hour.
And
It's
nobody cares about that.
advantageous to have a workforce that is very unlikely to unionize. It's not even that the people love getting paid or that they're stupid and don't know they're getting paid less. It's a lot of this is for remittances. You work here, send your money home, so they don't really care that they're getting paid less than what they could be if they were competitive here, because they don't even really live here. Like, this money is for my mom back in freaking Argentina,
Right.
or something, and that isn't not on purpose. Like, frickin' Tyson Chicken doesn't. Oh, I have no idea that all of our workforce were various Latino immigrants who do not have a strong social
knew that?
position.
Who could
And
know?
we could easily get them kicked the fuck out if they ever displease us in any way.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely. That is absolutely the case. And, you know, just as you were saying, like, why are they so, like, beneath the human standard that their destiny is to work as
you gotta
pseudo slaves?
pick lettuce.
Yeah, okay, okay, we're all
God to put you on earth.
we've been told for generations and generations, like, go to college so you can get a white collar job and you can live a great life and you can have a family and you can do all this and that and own your stuff and blah 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 blah, forgetting about how fake all that is, and it was a lie. But, like, that's the message that we're told basically as Americans, as legal Americans, mostly white people. But so, like, we don't look about who is slaughtering the animals. We don't look about the child slave, like, on the kill, cleaning the kill floor, and now that's being made more and more legal. Like, we don't look at the people picking the vegetables. I'm a vegan. Okay, who picked your fucking vegetables today? Like, why are they not allowed to have that as well? Why does somebody have to serve somebody else? That is why capitalism is a abject failure of a system, because it always depends on hierarchy and now we're in a system where it's trying to turn all people in some form or fashion into some sort of enslaved person, whether it be to a job because of your health insurance, whether it be to a bad marriage because of health insurance reasons, whether it be, you know, because you can't afford to lose your house, so you have to stick, you know, what you've got, so on and so forth. The system has been systematically rigged against people to bring more people into that umbrella. It used to be an us and them conversation, like, oh, you're well-to-do, you're legal, you're entitled, you got all this stuff, blah 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 blah. But now it's just like, it's a cash grab, essentially. Try to criminalize homeless people, get them in the system, start making them slaves, you know, like slaves to labor, like make sure nobody can leave their jobs, make sure, you know, there aren't enough jobs to go around, make sure that the white people blame the black people because they took their jobs, you know, like it's tale and whole of time, but now it's in turbo mode.
First it was just rando colonists. Then it was, oh, the indentured servants are coming over, better get them to fight with the randos. Then it was, oh, the slaves, like, better get the slaves. Blah, blah, blah. Like, there are jobs that you can trace that way back in the day. It's, oh, who do we have to do it? Oh, just other, like, Euro Anglo colonists, so we have to pay them at whatever rate. And then eventually it became, okay, this is now slave labor. Then it became liberated black labor, which they could pay less than white labor. And then even that got supplanted with immigrant labor. And why do they hire child employees? Do they hire them because they have small hands and are just really good workers? Or is it the exact same shit I was just talking about, where it's, they are very unlikely to organize, to form unions, etc. They are children. They're very unlikely to be fully versed in their rights. They're going to be easier to convince to work unethical overtimes and skip blah blah blah. They're easier to like kind of threaten and cow into doing the stuff you want them to do.
Absolutely.
They don't hire kids because they're good employees.
Yes.
They hire
Things
kids.
are going so well in this country that the laws are changing to reverse child labor laws.
That's where I think actually I need to start bringing those up as like pairing, because as soon as you say, hey, I am against unlimited immigration for economic and ethical reasons, so like, oh, you hate Latinos. It's like, that is not what I'm saying. It is in fact the opposite, is that I have respect for these people as human beings, which is why I don't think the best, quote, solution or a solution at all is to be like, come into America and work for not even close to what you're worth. But it's more than what they would get paid back at home. Yeah, that's because we enforce that as a system. That's actually the core of the problem.
How we're doing. We caused that.
Well, we're getting to some shit if we start talking about that. Like, why are you paid nothing to do the exact same job across a border? Oh, because we economically enforce that, because we will not allow companies, or industry, I should say, to develop to a point where you get high wage labor. Like, American factory workers weren't paid fucking nothing in the 70s. There's a reason why we moved all that shit to Canada and Mexico. Right. And then forced Canada and Mexico. You need to make your currency worth this much so we can, like, it all is together. Like, Canadian money has to be cheap.
Yes.
These foreign currencies have to remain weak or strong, depending on what decade it is and what kind of scheme we're trying to do over here in the U.S. to make it so their labor is cheaper, or our labor is cheaper, or their products are cheaper, or our products are cheaper. And it flips back and forth depending on which decade, what situation. Are we after World War I or II or Korea? Or, like, what are we doing currently? We went from being the we loan everybody money country, and that's why we had power, to now everyone is owed money by us country, and if we default on our loans, we're too big to fail, and we fuck up the entire global. Okay, I have a last step in my immigration thing here, because this isn't really about immigration. This is about deportations. And look at this, we're on Fox News. Look at how beautiful they are over at Fox News. Fox News. I don't know who either of those people are, but they're making funny faces.
Right from the bottom.
So we got Justice Samuel Alito wrote a fiery... Was it Alito who's in the documentary? It was the guy Scalia, the guy who died, right? Other Italian dude. Alito,
and Clarence
Scalia.
Thomas is referenced as well.
Because Thomas is like the hate figure. He's the one we've decided we're allowed to talk about why he's bad. Yeah. Unlike all the rest of them who you could do the exact same fucking thing with, but we
he's the figurehead of it. He takes the heat.
He's the big F that guy. Because he's also seems to be the most crass about it. He seems to be a big douchebag.
Right? Like, I love my RV.
It makes you an easy target if you're going to be a douchebag in public, man.
Yeah,
he feels invincible because he goes to all these like fancy rich people shit his whole life. All right. Sam Alito wrote a fiery dissent against a recent Supreme Court move to halt President Donald Trump's deportation of Venezuelan criminals under the Alien Enemies Act of 1978. 1798. Really old shit. The decision, which was issued early Saturday morning, effectively blocks deportations of Venezuelan migrants under the 18th century law, because that was like post-Revolutionary War, and they were trying to be like, hey, British spies.
Right.
In a decision that was also signed off on by conservative justices, Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett, and the court, those are the Trump judges, if you remember. So it never quite lines up where it's like Trump put in all the judges and they all do whatever he says. And like, but a lot of the times they actually don't do what he says. I don't fully understand the 12D chess going on what side here.
Right, yeah.
The court advised the White House not to remove Venezuelans held in Texas's Blue Bonnet Detention Center until further order of this court. Alito disapproved. Okay, so like I'm bringing this up. We all know what the big story is here, where Trump has started, or his administration at least, has started deporting people seemingly at random, and there's at least 2 people who are they're accused of like leading terroristic anti-American protests, but it's like no, they just were at a pro-Palestine protest, and they're getting deported for that. And they're all like green card holders who are here legally, which is why they're extraordinary. Because even if the exact same situation, guy went to a Palestine protest, but he has no documentation, it is harder legally to make the argument that you can't kick him out. Because it's like, well, the crime was you can't be here. So there you go. There's something. But these are dudes who have done seemingly nothing. And we keep asking for like, well, what's the crime? It's like, well, it's like, well, where's the conviction? Where's the accusation? And they just have nothing, because we keep going down to it is not illegal to have opinions in America, even if you aren't an American citizen. Our Bill of Rights actually does extend to everyone who is in the country.
Right.
like if you show up here, you can't murder people. It's like, well, I'm not an American citizen. Your laws do not apply to me. They do, though. Our laws do apply to you while you're here. And even if we're going to deport you because you were here illegally, that doesn't mean you don't get your first, like you aren't getting arrested for saying shit. You still have all of your rights. You may be, forced to leave the country if you are here without your documentation, et cetera, et cetera. But we were talking about green card holders, actually permanent resident, which is I think one above that, right? Is the Khalil who's getting deported for just being at protests. It is
I don't know the
extremely
intricacies of the story. Yeah, I'm not sure what his status exactly is on that.
But no one that we're talking about is full on just like walked in with nothing, like snuck across the border, like swam a river. Like that is not the situation with any of these people. And also, they are that thing mentioned Venezuelans a bunch of times. They are not being deported to Venezuela, as we've all probably heard. They're being deported to El Salvador. Like, Trump now has a Guantanamo 2, I guess, that he's sending people to. And believe me, I am just as upset about that now as I was when it was happening under Biden, as I was when it was happening under Obama, and then Obama and W. Bush. And then I was a child and didn't really know what was happening, but I was still against it in the W. Bush era.
But if you had brought that up at any other time, it would be like, well, they're lawyers and they know what they're doing, and but tourism.
If it's Obama, yes, they're lawyers. They know what they're doing. If it's W. Bush, he's horrible Hitler. If it's Trump,
right? There would have been such intense pushback, but now people are like, hey, I saw this happen. This is happening. Like, there are videos of just assholes going and grabbing people up. They have no authority to do it. You know, like, and people are getting upset about that, at least, at the very least. You know, you really upset liberal sensibilities when it's right in front of their face like that.
We have been watching this happen. This is just kids in cages versus detention facilities. Like, once again, the same actions have been happening. It is, I mean, it was Obama had ordered the killing of, they were trying to kill some terrorists or whatever, and they ended up killing an American citizen who was the 16-year-old son of an accused terrorist. And in that situation, I don't think it was Obama who said it was like his press secretary or something, but someone's like, hey man, like, what do you think about killing this 16-year-old? And the response was like, well, he shouldn't have had a terrorist father. And it's like, wow.
Right.
Okay. So this is the level of morals we're all operating off of here. So am I now supposed to be shocked? And I'm appalled, of course, but I'm not shocked when the exact same kind of things are happening under Trump, where it's like, well, he shouldn't have been at that protest. It's like, what? I thought this was the U.S. of A. I thought we're allowed to go to whatever fucking protests we want.
That's one of our main things,
The First Amendment actually covers hate speech, everybody. Legally, you're allowed to say as much wrong, horrible shit as you want.
Yes, and you know, the fact of it comes down to, like, you're allowed to say whatever you want to say legally, no matter what. But people don't have to like it or want to listen to it. There's nothing against them being like, hey, and then punching you in the face. Like, you're allowed.
You're not supposed to, you are supposed to be protected from being sent to Guantanamo 2 in El Salvador instead of fucking Venezuela. It's like, if they're Venezuelan terrorists, send them to Venezuela. What's going on? I've heard, again, I can't confirm, conspiracy, that apparently there's a Venezuelan gang. We keep hearing about these gangs in Venezuela. It's so scary and dangerous. But apparently there's like U.S.-supported gangs that, you know, like a lot of the shit in Mexico, where we send them guns and weapons because we're really hoping that they will lead to some kind of riot or overthrow or something to fuck with Maduro. And the reason that they aren't being sent back to Venezuela is that Maduro and them know, of course, and they will show up and they're like, ha-ha, we got you. They want them back for that real. Here, Maduro's like, bring them. I'll pay for the plane. I don't give a shit. That was like a headline. And weirdly, they're going to El Salvador for some reason. Like, why can't they go to Venezuela? Do you think Venezuela? I thought Venezuela would have horrible prisons, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be great for these horrible terrorists that we're sending out of the country.
They're making a really big show of it too. Like, they're like trying to make Trump look like some big tough guy, you know, about this, and like, oh, I told you I followed through, and look how I got them all shaved-headed, tied up together, and sitting together and whatnot.
Who's all, Trump? Who are those people?
Yeah, exactly. That's
just random fuckers.
When people started getting into this, and they're like, these are just random people you grabbed up off the street, you fuck. Like, what the hell is this? And he's like, bored. And the next thing, like, he has this really like historical king type of a attitude about things, where he's just like, bored, and then moves on to the next thing, right? Like, Henry
he starts doing something, then somebody
like,
gets in his ear.
Dead. You know, like, that's what he's trying to do.
Part of the deal.
And it comes out, that's how it comes out a lot of the time, is just Tyrant King being like bored and moving on to the next thing. And that's what we got through the first administration, was just like, I want to do this really horrible, awful thing. And then and then people are like, you can't You can't do that, even in his own cabinet. Like you can't do that horrible, awful thing.
That's not.
And then the lawyers and like stuff are like, you can't do this horrible thing. And he's like, you're making this not fun. I don't want it anymore. And then they just go to the next thing.
Part of the deal. So like
Part
last
of the deal
thing
is right.
Yeah, it's past 11. I got to get out of here. But
yeah, me too.
Last headline, very relevant here. About 90% of this is the LA Times. 90% of migrants sent to El Salvador lacked U.S. criminal record. So that means only 10%. Or even if it was 50%, that's a really shitty percentage here of the people getting sent to Guantanamo 2 actually have any kind of criminal record. If you are actually deporting people who provably have fucking murdered people and are wrecking shit and are, quote, actual bad hombres or whatever, that's one thing. It is an entirely different thing to be fucking sending people to Guantanamo 2 in El Salvador who we haven't even been able to convict them of shit. No. Like, how many of those 90% who don't have convictions do they even have cases? Because I mean, it's like, do they have even what's the word? Not acute charges. Are there even charges against some of these people? Because a lot of times the charges is total bullshit. They're like, oh, he got charges of like these dudes who have the crown tattoos. People who have, which, as many people pointed out, it's like if you've been to a Latino neighborhood, fucking everybody has that crown tattoo. Like I've seen that on everybody. It's a very common tattoo.
There was one guy that had like a tattoo for autism awareness or something like that. That they were like, that's some like Christ is that might be the main guy they're trying to get back. I'm not sure. Like all these things start to blend together because exactly what you're saying. It's 90%. Like how what they've succeeded in doing is really confusing everyone and sending all like immigration lawyers and pro bono lawyers and stuff into a frenzy because there's not enough people to represent these people. And it's like, how do we even start sorting through this kind of stuff? Even if you had a whole mass of people willing to donate all their time and things like that. But yes, that's what's going on. And we will continue to talk about this as it evolves because we get put in that position. We don't have definitive information. We're not journalists. We're just commentators or people with opinions, basically, and we don't like what's going on, so we talk about it. So as this goes on, as the all these things we talked about continually evolve, we will be here to discuss it with you, for you. As always, we like to talk to the chat, so you could jump in with questions, comments, thoughts, and we appreciate that when we get the chance. Did you have a musical styling for us for this episode?
I kind of did, but now I'm so over time I can't.
Okay.
But next week is a very normal week. I'm out of Easter now. Yesterday was like a semi-day off for me, which was cool. So I got to watch a bit of Dark Money, at least the first half of it. But yeah, everybody, they are sending people who we have not even convicted here with our ridiculous court system. Like, it's not that hard to get some convictions. That's why I'm also like, we just freaking run them through our bullshit court system and get some freaking numbers on them at least. Right. But they aren't. They're just deporting what appear to be randos. And
letting random people grab them up without impunity, or with complete impunity on this.
Yeah, it's like, what agency does this person work for? A lot of that going on. I'm like, we're just doing secret police, like which we've already done for a freaking while. It's just welcome to the club, everyone. Yeah. Welcome to caring about this. We've really needed your energy, and I hope you don't just decide it's all okay again once a Democrat inevitably gets elected again in either another. This
continues on in a different form with different words. We go from kids in cages to detention centers, so it's just going to keep changing hands over and over.
I bring this up mainly so people can't just to appear, quote, fair and balanced, because I got a lot of heat during the Biden administration saying, oh, you just don't like Biden, you just really like Trump actually, and now that he's back in office and I'm complaining about the exact same things just with a different guy, and I was hopeful. I was like, you know what, maybe he'll blow everyone's mind and really do some cool stuff. And he sort of was like, I was really happy about, oh, maybe the National Institute for Democracy is going to go away. Maybe we are going to stop sending dark money around the world in the form of agricultural subsidies, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But that hasn't happened. Nope. He started kind of doing it, and then very rich people got in his ear. He stopped. Art of the deal. We did it, everybody. Yeah.
We didn't blame it on other people and other reasons, and it wasn't me, my fault, blah, 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 blah. So. All right, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. And as always, you can watch all of our past episodes at your leisure on our YouTube channel, Twitter, follow on Twitter and everything like that. We're on what's the Twitch and Rumble. I mean, you can find us. So join, follow, comment, subscribe, do the whole thing, and we will be back with you next week with whatever fresh hell is going on then. So
probably reading out of that economics book.
Yeah, maybe we'll get a reading. Nice that'll be pretty rad. Yes. All right. So thanks everybody. Take care.